I'm Chris McGinley, author of Coal Black, a collection of Kentucky set short stories. And I'm going to read from a longer piece I'm working on about a young woman growing up in the mountains. 1901. The young woman ran full speed across the mountain clearing. She cut a strange figure, tearing through the high grass she used to play on as a little girl, her linsey dress soaked with moisture from the bog seat and streaked with mud. Her hands were covered in it, and the axe she carried too. When it happened, she had been working outside, and she wore her father's heavy boots now, which made for an odd contrast with the dress. She had gambled on a shortcut, believing she might overtake her quarry, but the laurel slick was rougher than she remembered it, and the dress was now ripped in places everywhere. The orbit of her left eye was filled with blood that set off the white around the iris. It ran in thin lines across the bridge of her nose and onto her cheek. A solitary filament ran down the high collar of the dress and partly followed the long line of buttons there. She still hadn't cleared the blood that flowed from her nose into her mouth. Its coppery taste was gone now, but there were traces of it between her teeth. When she reached the edge of the clearing, she pulled up short. There was a red tail somewhere above, and for a brief moment she confused its song for her prey. She closed her eyes and listened, trying hard to slow her breathing. High up, a squirrel darted from a dray and jumped from one limb to another, and somewhere nearby, a woodpecker worked on a tree. She realized then that she had lost her wooden thumb in the chase, though the leather socket was still cinched tightly to her hand. But all of this had to be put aside now. She would have to listen more deeply. Again, she took a long breath and closed her eyes. And then she heard it. It moved below her, down at the base of the sandstone formation, a full 40 feet beneath her. She took a more direct route than she would have normally followed, gambling again for time, and she made it without a fall. When she hit the boulder, she took off to the east, running along the tops of the rocks. She could hear her quarry moving beneath her, and she saw ahead where she thought she might intercept it. She leapt over some crevices and sighted it below, and then it sighted her. But it was too late. A man, bloodied from a severed ear and with an arm that dangled uselessly, was moving along the path the best he could. He looked up when he heard something on the boulders above. A young woman in a linsey dress, her face a mottled mass of blood and dirt, flew like a hawk above him, her arms outstretched. And like a hawk, she came straight down on him. She held a stone axe in her left hand, and she screamed like nothing he had ever heard in a lifetime of killing things. 15 years earlier. The first thing that surprised her was how sharp it was. That was up on the bog when she was just 10 years old. Her arms were covered to the elbows in thick black mud and bits of sphagnum moss, and the hem of her day dress was dark with the bog's water. She ran her fingers along the edge of it, careful not to cut herself. As she held it, her father poured water from a gourd and washed away the dirt. She could see then how the stone blade had been hafted with rawhide around an oblong hole where it fit snugly into a piece of dark hardwood. Hickory, maybe, she thought. She would ask her father, but not now. The water had cleared away the dirt to reveal the tool, the weapon, and how finely it was constructed. How perfectly weighted it felt, even in her small hands. It was more than what it appeared to the eye, she realized. Words could wait. It was enough to look at it for now. She considered the edge once more, running her finger gently along it, and then touched the piece that protruded through the hole. Finally, she said, "The pole's sharp, too." Her father set his hand on her back. "It's pretty, isn't it?" She placed the stone head in the flat of her little palm and felt its coolness there, and its surprising smoothness. "It's big, but not huge, and it's lighter than our axe," she said, lifting it up and down. "A little bit lighter." "Big enough to do damage, by God," her father said. She looked up at him. "Maybe it was made for a woman," she said. "Maybe." She drew the head flat across her forearm. "I wonder what it was used on." "Careful there, Liddy," he said. "Likely used on all sorts of animals, and to make other tools, I reckon, just to do everyday work." She swept her hair off her face and left a black smudge on her forehead. Her father resisted the urge to wipe it away. Do you think it was used on people? She asked him. It's untelling. I'm not even sure how old it is. Maybe we could keep it. Not to play with, I don't mean, but to use. She tilted her head toward the ground. Maybe she would want us to have it, to use it. She's not going to use it anymore. Her father took the axe from her hand, reached down into the hole, and set it back on the dead woman's chest. That I ain't so sure of, honey, he said. Then the two set to filling in the shallow grave. Thanks so much, Chris McGinley. Take care.